Program funding for the Organic Odyssey was provided by the California Certified Organic Farmers Foundation, as well as the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. Visit their web pages or social media for all their amazing content and guidance on everything organic. Support for the Organic Odyssey is provided in part by the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly. For more information or to support the center, please visit organic.calpoly.edu. That's organic.calpoly.edu for the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly. Support for the Organic Odyssey is provided in part by AgCom Central. Visit AgCom Central on twitch.tv or youtube.com for all content ag-related. That's AgCom Central on twitch.tv or youtube.com for AgCom Central.
Hello everyone, my name is Emery Pura and I'm here with my co-host Amanda Kidd. Welcome to the third episode of Season 2, Organic Odyssey, Journeying Through Sustainable Farming at Cal Poly. Today we will be talking about CCOF's 50 Reasons to Choose Organic. Yes, there's 50. Californian Certified Organic Farmers is a nonprofit organization founded half a century ago in California. They focus on organic policies and support organic growth. We are joined by an awesome panel today. Dr. Mike, would you like to introduce yourself?
I could start. My name is Dr. Moses Mike. I'm an ag comms professor, and I'm happy to sort of be that communication arm, what communication looks like for the organic industry. Not that I'm speaking to the whole industry, but like from my perspective as a professor in a class, yeah.
All right, and I'm Dr. Matt Grieshop. I'm the director of the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production Research here at Cal Poly, and don't sell yourself short, Dr. Mike. So I'm really happy to work with you. It's great to have professional communicators to work with.
Okay, let's dive right in.
Well, who's Amanda?
I introduced her.
Oh, sorry.
We've always been doing that.
I'm so sorry.
I was looking for co-host. Hey, guys.
Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, guys. I am Amanda Kidd, and I am a second-year agricultural communications major here at Cal Poly, and I'm super excited to be hosting this with Emery and working on this project.
Just FYI, Amanda's mom came in today. I just wanted to say that to view her daughter's progress in digital media communications. Emery.
Okay, let's dive right in. One of the main topics I feel is worth talking about is organic is free from synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. Dr. Grieshop, what is your opinion on synthetic pesticides and fertilizers?
So that's a great question, Emery. I guess, I have farmed organically, and I, of course, have spent a career working with the organic farming industry, so I don't typically want to use synthetic pesticides and fertilizers in the agriculture that I work in. As far as how other people farm, I am a farming agnostic in that sense, so I don't like to really tell people how to farm, but I know how I like to farm. So, but bringing it back to organics, I think one of the big challenges that we faced in the organic industry over the last really 20 or 30 years is I think there's been an increasing emphasis on the fact that we don't use synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. We use naturally sourced fertilizers and pesticides. But really, all of that really should get back to the development of healthy soil. I mean, the core of organic agriculture is the development of healthy soil. And of course, not all synthetic fertilizers and pesticides are necessarily bad for soil, but a large number of them are. They don't promote a healthy soil system. So I think, always bringing it back to that is what's really important. But certainly from the standpoint of limiting the use of those, it's a good thing.
Well, my question becomes is, so no synthetic fertilizer or pesticides at all in organic production?
Well, so on the fertilizer side, I can very confidently say that 100% none. And we could get into the way that fertilizers are created, and we have a future podcast where we'll talk about that from an organic perspective. In terms of pesticides, it's a little more nuanced. There actually are one or two synthetic substances that the EPA classifies as a pesticide that are allowed, these are actually insect pheromones that are used to distract male insects from finding female insects, so there's no baby insects, which means you don't have caterpillars munching on your greens or your apples, etc. But in the sense of, I think for most people, they think of a pesticide as something that kills something. The only pesticides in that sense that are used in organic ag are sourced from plant oils, other plant products like chrysanthemum daisies are the source of pyrethrins, for example. Also, there's living viruses and fungi and bacteria that can be used to combat insects and fungi, and to a very limited extent, some weeds in organic production. And then we also use things like sulfur. There's some use of copper, which are elements off the periodic table that are used to sort of nudge these systems when pests get maybe a little out of control. But so it's like most things, it's a little nuanced. But I would say 99% that is factually correct.
That's a good percentage.
Yeah.
That's a good percentage.
Probably more than that, but yeah.
So back to soil health, why would you say that having good, healthy soil, good structure to it, and all of that, important for an organic farmer to be successful?
No, go ahead, Amanda.
And going along with that, can you describe for someone who wouldn't know, like, what does healthy soil look like versus unhealthy soil or dead soil? Because I know you're talking about that a little bit before.
Yeah. So soil health is really at the base of all terrestrial life. So all plants, or nearly all plants that live, on land, need soil to grow in. And soil is this kind of miraculous complex system. It really exists just on the very top layer of our geology, right? I mean, you've got bedrock, and plants aren't going to grow in bedrock too well. And then you have this incredible mix of mineral components and living components and recently living components. So dead stuff that's getting recycled, and that's what plants really rely on to get the nutrition that they need to photosynthesize and be healthy, so that we can eat them and be healthy. And if you don't have a healthy soil, you lose the ability. It changes the way that nutrient management can work in a system. For organics, since we don't use synthetic fertilizers, we absolutely rely on healthy soils. And in terms of recognizing healthy soil, this is actually something in the research world right now is a really hot topic. Soil quality is something that if you work in ag and you work in soils, it's really easy to recognize as you gain context, but it's really hard to quantify. And so there's a lot of different folks trying all kinds of different types of tests and measures right now to come up with just a few ways to say, oh yes, this soil is healthy and this soil is not healthy. But it's proving to be incredibly challenging. But some of the things I would look for in a soil, typically a darker color. If carbon is kind of the building block of all life. It's what microbes use for energy. It's in all organic molecules, not organic and certified organic, but like organic chemistry. So dark soils have a higher content of carbon typically. If you see things like earthworms in soils and other living animals, that's a good indication that it's a healthy biological system. Things like plant roots are also really good. Another fun thing you can do is you can measure what's called aggregate stability, and this is an indicator of healthy soil. Soils it's like a fluid, but it's made up of all these little pieces of minerals stuck together with biological components. And soils that have good aggregate stability will maintain their structure in water. So you can actually take a soil and put it in like a peanut butter jar full of water, and if it immediately falls out and you get all this fine particulate and it never really drops out of solution, that's an indication of a soil with very poor aggregate stability. It's an unhealthy soil. If you have a soil that has a lot of life in it, a lot of bacteria and fungi and nematodes and all kinds of stuff, typically you'll see the soil will hold its structure in the water. And if particles do come off, it'll settle out really quickly.
Yeah, over summer I did an internship and we did this test. It was like the Solvita brand. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
And we did aggregate stability testing, and it was like with this little net thing you did, and it was like give you a number, and it was interesting.
So you're measuring the quantity of stuff in the water around the net?
Yeah, like if the soil had a larger, if it didn't spread out as much, then it had a worse aggregates. Yeah. It was interesting.
Yeah, so that's a good way. You can smell it too. So there's a group of organisms called actinomycetes that have this the healthy soil smell. I don't know how to
You
say
can
it.
smell the soil?
Yeah, I smell soil all the time. I mean, if you're in a pasture, you want to be careful where you collect the soil before you smell it. But if you dig down and collect the soil and smell it, there's a really earthy sort of scent that you'll get, and it's created by these organisms called actinomycetes, and a very sort of minerally soil that doesn't have much life in it and isn't probably going to be as supportive of plant life. Typically will just have a very neutral smell. It won't smell, you might get some dust up your nose.
Hey, listen, we're talking about smelling stuff. We're only on the first one. We're only on the first one.
We do have
hit us with another one.
Yeah, we spent a little while talking about the smell of soil.
Get excited about soil.
So our second topic we have is organic practices protect bees. So how would you describe how Cal Poly Organics here at school use or okay?
Can you rephrase the
bees.
question?
Yeah, clearly I need to rephrase. How does Cal? Oh my gosh.
How does Cal Poly take measures to protect bees here?
Oh yeah. So really, when you think about beneficial insects, I'm an entomologist by training, so this is where I get even more excited than soil. So when you think about habitat management,
I'm smelling bees now.
I've probably smelled bees. But yeah, I've kept bees for a little bit. But at any rate, insects, they're like all living animals. They need habitat. And if you think about that, they need something to eat. So one thing that we try to do in organic ag and in other sustainable ag systems as well is we try to keep flowers around all the time. So having cover crops, trying to minimize the amount of bare ground, making sure that there are plants there to hold soil together is going to lead to resources for things like bees. If you have flowers, then you've got nectar and pollen, which is what the bees need to keep going. The other thing is giving them a place to live. And so if you think about honeybees, we do that, they're like livestock. We give them a house. But for native bees, maintaining habitat for them. So again, some undisturbed soil where they can nest in the ground if they're ground nesting bees. A little bit of, wood and wood trash on the ground and stuff for them to nest in if they need that, if that's the kind of bee they are. And the last thing is really stability over time. You can't just feed them once. You can't just give them habitat once. You really have to provide this throughout time. And this actually gets into the synthetics part. Insecticides kill bees. I mean, they're insects, so this shouldn't be surprising. And synthetic insecticides tend to be much stronger and better at killing insects than a lot of our natural insecticides. Well, that's not to say our natural insecticides won't kill bees as well, but it gets a little nuanced depending on how that insecticide works. So for organics, it's really about maintaining habitat, giving them flowers, food, and then really being careful about if we do apply insecticides, which we do in most farming systems, making sure we're not doing it when the bees are really active and choosing insecticides that may not interact with the bees. So again, some of those living insecticides or pesticides I was talking about earlier, like some of the viruses and bacteria and things that essentially make insects sick, they're very specific. So a lot of them won't kill bees. They'll kill one or two insects that we're trying to target versus a lot of our synthetics are very broad spectrum. This is why they get used so much. It's why they're a useful technology.
Yeah. And as a communicator, I just want to say here that, bees aren't the only pollinators. They're the cutest ones, probably. I don't know for sure. Yeah, for sure. We don't want to only allow for our audience to recognize bees as pollinators, but they're insects, and if you're spreading synthetic fertilizer, then they're captivated in all of that as well. So we want to be careful of that.
That's a great point. And yeah, I actually, in a research study I did a decade ago, we were doing video recording of insects responding to blueberry flowers in Michigan, but I had footage of mosquitoes actually pollinating blueberry flowers. So there's all kinds of, flies, beetles, ants, mosquitoes, butterflies, they all do it. Bees are especially good at it. They've really evolved to it. But insects are everywhere and part of everything in nature.
Number 3.
I know this term's kind of new and loosely used, or maybe there's not very much of a definition for it yet, but organic farms are regenerative and more. And I have the term definition that they gave, so bear with me. But this new term regenerative CCUF describes it as, in general, it's accepted to describe agricultural practices that improves natural resources, improves soil health, and creates farm systems that align with ecosystems and improve quality of life for native plants, pests, and animals. Organic standards do all that and more.
Yeah, so, one of the interesting things I've seen with the regenerative ag and the sort of language around that, as people, it seems like we need to rename things every few years. And I'm more of into fundamental principles and ultimately, the core principles of organic agriculture as it was, really first put together beginning in the 1930s, 1940s was building soil, keeping ground covered, promoting biodiversity, and trying as much as possible to work with natural processes rather than sort of steamrolling over them, which is what a lot of synthetic inputs do. And again, there's all kinds of ways to farm. I'm not really into the white hat, black hat farmer.
There's room for everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, I personally, when I've farmed, I know how I like to farm. And I know how we like to farm on the Cal Poly organic farm. So, in my mind, as someone who's been in the organic movement for a long time, I feel like there are a tremendous number of similarities between what's being called regenerative now and organic. And right now, though, with the regenerative word, it's interesting because there isn't really a legal definition or even a commonly agreed upon definition for what regenerative agriculture is. Whereas, of course, since 2002 in the United States, we have a federal legal standard for what it means to farm organically. The other piece, and I can't not say this, I guess, is one thing that I'm very cautious about when talking about regenerating native systems or natural systems is that no agricultural system is a natural system. Just as an entomologist, the critters I study have been flying around for over 300 million years, 350 million years, and they were crawling for at least 420. Human beings have been part of the landscape for maybe 250,000 in our current, what we recognize as humans today. Higher apes and humans, it may be as old as 2 million years. Ants have been farming for 15 million years. So leafcutter ants, for example, and ants that take care of aphids on plants. So I'm always really cautious because, a natural system, is for the vast majority of the natural history of this planet did not include humans. So when we start, imposing our will on that system, I'm always very reticent to talk about natural. And regeneration of natural, and that's I think that's a point of contention with some of the regenerative activists right now, and some of the organic activists and whatnot. But from my standpoint, again, we're newcomers on the block. We haven't been around very long, and the systems that we rely on have been around a very, very long time, and they'll be around a very much longer time.
Yeah. They sound pretty similar, like organic and regenerative. The definitions, they can
be. I mean, the interesting thing right now, like with regenerative ag, there are some definitions of regenerative ag that they're really fixated on no-till or the extreme minimal use of steel in the earth. And a lot of those systems in the Midwest, for example, use a lot of herbicides and genetically modified crops. And again, I'm not pointing a finger at that and saying, no, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, you should do that, whatever. That's how food is being grown. But that's not allowed under organic agriculture. We don't use synthetic herbicides and we don't use genetically modified crops. And so I think, and that's going to be really interesting, I think, over the next 10 years is seeing as the regenerative movement kind of works its way to where it's going, it's what is going to fall under that umbrella and what isn't. And right now, so I will plug regenerative organic certification right now, because personally I think organics is a great place to start with, and then if we are going to start calling something regenerative, it's like let's build off the base of organics, and then let's add additional sort of principles and an additional incentive and provide additional ways for farmers to further reduce their impact on the environment and work increasingly with natural ecological principles versus sort of industrial principles.
With that being said, we are now going to take a moment to pause and watch our Man on the Street videos that were filmed by our fellow classmates here at Cal Poly.
My name is Andrew Angulo, and today we're going to be asking people what they think about organic farming.
I think that sounds healthier than GMO.
I agree.
I think less pesticides is usually pretty good.
I think there's a place for every kind of farming in the agricultural industry, but I think what I don't want to happen is demonization of any type of management practices.
Agreed. I support people who buy organic, but I would not.
I think it's good to not use, those pesticides.
Pretty expensive, to be honest.
What do you think about organic farming?
I don't think about organic farming.
Do you think at all?
Welcome back, and we hope you enjoyed those videos made by our fellow classmates. To jump right back into point 4, we're going to be talking about how organics conserves water. From someone who's from California personally, I have seen the water levels go up and down. So can you describe how you've seen the water levels affect the organics in the past couple of years?
Yeah, so actually this comes right back to soil. So one of the
we love soil.
It always comes back to soil. So in organic systems, if you are promoting a healthy soil which incorporates a lot of organic material, or basically dead plants and animals that are getting broken back down into their basal elements, carbon and whatnot in the soil, you get an increase in water holding capacity. And so you can think of carbon, or I like to think of carbon as nature's sponge. Carbon's a really sticky molecule, and things like to stick to it. And water is one of those things. It also, by having the carbon there to feed microorganisms and whatnot, you can get like those healthy aggregates we were talking about earlier, and that gives you pore space in the soil. So you can think of that as, there's all these particles in the soil where there's space in between them where water can infiltrate and stay. So that, I think, is really, the main way in which organic ag is especially, good for a dry farming situation like in California.
I love a good water. Water's good tasting water for me is where it's at. I don't know if other people can taste the flavor of water, but water has flavor.
I can, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fiji water.
Yeah.
Oh, you're bougie.
It tastes good though.
I've noticed even the water from my hometown in Folsom, California to here, it's the water to me tastes so different. Water here is so different compared to home for me.
I didn't mean to open that can of worms. I just
Yeah, so that, I would say that's probably the biggest way. And then all the things that we do to promote healthy soil also can help. So for example, keeping ground covered, keeping cover crops in the system, not leaving soil bare, means that water has a chance to infiltrate better. Water will follow the pattern of roots down to the soil. Water, if you have a hard pack on top, a crust on top of soil, where you haven't had plants growing and things, water will tend to go sideways rather than down. And so again, but it's all sort of around soil, but there's lots of different sort of nifty ways that it happens.
I'm kind of curious to know how you guys reacted at the Cal Poly farm. In the past couple of years, we've had a really bad drought. I guess last year we had lots of rain, but 5-6 years ago, we definitely had a bad drought. Is there certain ways you guys react to that drought, or is there things that you can do when there's no water or less water available?
I think, modifying how much and what you're growing, depending on the water you can access, is what we always come back to. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I think, right now, the really interesting thing we're seeing is where we do use really good organic practices and we keep plants in the ground and we keep roots going. We're not tilling all the time, but we're still tilling. Water infiltration can really reduce flood runoff. So for example, if you have that sort of hard packed soil where water can't penetrate very quickly, it runs sideways, which means it accumulates somewhere and then suddenly somebody's getting flooded out. If you have roots in the soil and you have good soil structure, the water goes down, and so much less ends up flowing into surface water. And we've I've definitely seen that. There's lots of examples online where you can see orchards or other, pastures or other planting systems where folks who are really following those good practices, you won't have any puddles, and then across the street it looks like, oh, there should be alligators there after a heavy rain because it's a swamp. And that's the being able to deal with the abundance of water is actually a big advantage of that healthy soil as well. But it also locks it in and it stores it there so that during the dry times, those plants can put their roots down and access that water that's stored in the soil.
I kind of have a feeling this point's going to go back to sovereignty, so I'm just going to say it. Organic enhances the land's long-term agricultural productivity, which is really important because the land we have here is what we have. We're not getting any more of it. Might be taken.
We're not getting new land?
No.
No. Man.
What we have right now. So is it soil?
It's soil again. And it really, that carbon is a big part of it again. So in addition to, carbon serves as an energy source for microbes. It's a sponge and it's sticky, so it hangs on to micronutrients and nutrients that plants need to survive, as well as all of the microorganisms and the nematodes and annelids and all the animal life or microbial life that's in that soil. They need those minerals and elements as well, just like us. And so having that healthy soil structure means that you can continue to grow crops in it. And we've seen this. I mean, the Dust Bowl of the late 20s and 30s in the lower Midwest was really the result of poor agricultural practice, where there was a lot of tillage, very little cover crop, not really paying attention to the quality of our soil, and we lost the carbon and the living components of it, and then the mineral components blew away. And you go from having these very deep topsoils to very shallow ones.
Is the next question about soil too?
No.
Okay.
Because we can talk about soil all day.
I mean, maybe people working in soil. No, I'm just kidding. Organic creates jobs. And I want to ask Dr. Mike, I feel like over the past couple of years, organic has gotten more trendy in the social settings of life and people. So how do you feel about the organics and personally?
It's all right. It's all right. Her mom's in the room. She's a little nervous. It's okay. So going back to the original question, that the organic industry creates jobs. Yeah, for sure. I think as an ag communicator, I feel like there are jobs at organic companies that are directly related to communicators, right? Because we've been farming conventionally for so long that when there's the opportunity for the market to open up to a new sort of product, communication has to be central to that. And of course, like Dr. Grieshop said, we're not trying to make this black and white, but conventional producers and marketers are sort of the on the other side of organic producers and marketers, and so it's perfect competition. So in that, you have to be good at communicating, and this is part of the reason why I want to show students that there are multiple sides to many stories. And so as a communicator, if you want to attach yourself to not a cause, but to a concept, you can structure your marketability towards a specific concept, like organic production as well. And then the other part of that question was, well, how do I feel about organics?
Well, no, I was saying how it's become more trendy, and I was going to ask about how you felt about the trendiness of organics, and if people are just using it as like, oh, I'm going to be cool and trendy on TikTok and eat organic, or if you think they're doing it for their health.
That's another way too that it's creating jobs, right? So like social media influencers are using these items. They are communicators as well. In case you didn't know that, social media influencers are communicators, and their audience listens to what they're communicating. I say all that to say, if someone is using organic production / the organic industry, organic information as their platform or the foundation of their platform on social media, they are definitely creating social buzz about the topic, and it really does have impact and influence on their followers. Oh, director is saying 5 to 7 minutes remaining. All right.
Okay, let's move right along.
Well, can I comment on that?
Sure.
Because I think beyond the communication sphere. I mean, so this gets into the USDA National Organic Program. So one of the things that I think is most inspiring about the USDA National Organic Program is that it is agricultural policy that is 100% consensual in nature. So it's one of the only ag policies I can point at and say that, okay, so you've got a group of farmers that are saying, hey, we'd like to farm this way. And you have a group of consumers that are saying, hey, we'll pay you to farm this way. And there's actually, there's a transfer of economic power there, right? And so it's not so much of what we see in terms of ag regulation is really much more force-based, and it's thou shalt do this or we're not going to buy from you, or thou shalt do this or we'll sue you into non-existence. Whereas in organic production, there actually is a mutually beneficial transfer of value. And to me, that's a really wonderful, beautiful thing. But it also brings up, I mean, to this point of, price point and cost and trend and everything else, I think from a marketing standpoint, it provides this opportunity for market segmentation and sort of the kind of like, a Cadillac kind of mentality or Macintosh mentality, where are you buying that because you're you're driving it, or are you buying it to show off? That's definitely part of the marketplace. But this kind of points back, I think, at one of the basic problems we have in agriculture, which is it's really hard to make a living as a farmer. I think some people think it's easy, but the margins that ag operations operate under are razor thin. And the unfortunate reality of the type of production behaviors that really promotes is one that is based off increasingly externalizing costs, because that's where you're going to see your margin. You're not going to get a higher price. You're going to figure out a way to do things cheaper. Well, there's always a cost. And so, for example, the dead zone off the Gulf of Mexico, that is really the result of synthetic fertilizers in the Mississippi watershed. So we've got an area off the Gulf of Mexico around the size of New Jersey where fish can't live.
I didn't know that. That's super cool.
And that is
that's not cool.
No,
not cool. It's cool to learn.
And we know why it is. We know it's because of nitrate and phosphate load in that watershed that leads to what's called eutrophication, which is an ecological sort of death spiral where the oxygen is essentially used up out of the water. And this leads to an ecosystem collapse in that aquatic system. That is traceable back to the low margins that farmers receive for their crops. So organics provide a vehicle for sort of addressing that, saying that, okay, you're not going to use these synthetic products. They're not going to have these, you're going to minimize those downstream impacts. But hey, someone's going to pay you for that. And that, I think, is really important. But that brings up a lot of social justice issues. It's like, how do we, for folks who don't have a lot of financial power, like how do we provide you with healthy food that is maybe a little less environmentally damaging? So it's really nuanced. But I think that's really important to think about. I mean, it is organics. It's voluntary. No one tells you have to farm organically. No one tells you have to buy organics. If you choose to do those things, you're engaging in a consensual exchange of value. Whereas so much of our policy is really, it's a stick. It's a hammer. It's now you'll do this, or there's going to be bad consequences for you.
We're going to close up the podcast with the last point, which is CCOF's 50th reason, and it's organic can feed the world. Do you think, Dr. Grieshop, that organic is competitive with conventional yields, and do you think one day that eventually it could be 100% organic?
So this is one of those questions that gets, and ideas that gets bandied about a lot. And I think, like so many very simple statements, it belies a lot of nuance. And so for me, when I think about this, it's always feed the world what? So, I mean, seriously. So, I mean, and again, I mean, this gets back to feed the world an American-style industrialized diet. Probably not, frankly. I mean, the amount of resources that goes into the grain that we grow to feed to animals so we can eat them is tremendous. And again, I'm not telling people to eat beef, not eat beef, all right? I mean, it's just the facts are the facts. If you eat lower in the food chain, there's a lot less material and energy needed to do that. So I think, an organically, largely vegetarian diet, yeah, we could definitely do that. An organic diet based off, what comes out of our sort of feedlot and confined animal systems? No. I don't think there's enough energy in the biosphere to do that. But I think if meat becomes and animal products become less of a central part of the diet and more of, say, a condiment.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I could live with that.
Yeah,
and I'm not telling you to, but I think that's that's it. If you really get into the energy dynamics of agriculture and sort of the mass of material that's moving around in our food system, I think that's it.
Well, it's let right now. Some people are gonna give up meat on certain days and things like that. Hopefully that. What? Not you?
I need to get my. Yeah. I need to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a good podcast. That's all the time we have today. So if you're curious about the other 40 reasons, check out the CCOF blog to find out. Thank you for listening.
Program funding for the Organic Odyssey was provided by the California Certified Organic Farmers Foundation, as well as the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. The show was created by Matt Grieshop, the talent coordinator and resident organic expert, as well as Moses Mike, the faculty production lead. The Organic Odyssey is a production of the AGC 225 class called Digital Communications and Agriculture. The student team that produced the show included Andrew Angulo, the director, hosts Amanda Kidd and Emery Pura, and the technical team, Bailey Knirk, Daniela Rodriguez-Ruiz, Delaney Browder, Katie Cook, and Sierra Fugman. The Organic Odyssey is a digital media collaboration between the Agricultural Education and Communications Department and the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly. These credits were read by Chelsea Ann. Thanks for listening.